The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched high above the gathered representatives, its crystal walls catching light from a dozen different suns. Princess Zara stood in the center of the massive chamber, her silver skin gleaming under the artificial lights. Her people, the Valterians, were known across the galaxy for their tall, graceful forms and the small jewel-like crystals that grew naturally along their temples. These crystals allowed them to read thoughts and share emotions directly with other minds. But right now, Zara wished she could turn off that ability completely. The mental pressure from hundreds of angry alien delegates pressed against her consciousness like a crushing weight. Their thoughts buzzed with frustration, impatience, and disappointment. Some delegates had traveled for months through space to witness this ceremony, and she was ruining everything. Princess Zara, spoke Council Leader Vex, his 4 arms gesturing dramatically as his blue-scaled face showed clear annoyance. You have refused this marriage proposal for the 3rd time. The alliance between the Valterian Empire and the Kron Federation is crucial for galactic peace. Why do you continue to resist? Zara lifted her chin higher, her long white hair flowing like liquid silver down her back. Because I believe this alliance is built on fear, not wisdom, she replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. For 2,000 years, our civilizations have formed these political marriages, trading children like cargo to maintain power. Where has it led us? Murmurs of shock rippled through the assembled delegates. Speaking against tradition in such a public forum was almost unthinkable, especially for a princess of the royal blood. Ambassador Krone, 7 stepped forward from the Kron delegation. His mechanical body clicked and whirred as he moved, the result of his people's belief that biological forms were inefficient. Princess, your emotional response proves the necessity of this union. The Kron offer logical thinking and advanced technology. The Valterians provide psychic abilities and military strength. Together, our peoples will dominate this sector of space. Dominate, Zara repeated, tasting the bitter word. And when we have crushed or absorbed every other species, what then? When there are no more worlds to conquer, no more peoples to control, what becomes of civilizations that know only how to take? She turned to address the full assembly, her voice growing stronger. Look around this chamber. The Hexari disappeared after conquering 12 systems. The Ninth Empire fell when their perfect military machine turned on itself. The Zorlak unity collapsed when they ran out of enemies to unite against. Every galactic power that has risen through force and strategic marriages has crumbled within 500 years. Council Leader Vex's mind touched hers, sending waves of diplomatic concern mixed with genuine worry. Through their psychic connection, she felt his thoughts. The child speaks truth, but truth poorly timed can destroy us all. Princess, Vex said aloud, your concerns have merit, but we must work within the systems we have. Change comes slowly to the galaxy. The Kron Alliance offers immediate protection against the expanding hegemony forces in the Outer Rim. Before Zara could respond, a new voice echoed through the chamber. Emergency docking request from Vessel Harmony's Dream, Earth Registry. We have engine failure and request immediate assistance. The assembled delegates looked around in confusion. Earth was a newly discovered world whose people had only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last 50 years. Most galactic civilizations considered humans to be barely above the level of primitive tribes, interesting only as a curiosity. Ignore them, Ambassador Krone, 7 clicked. We have important matters to discuss. But Zara felt something unusual through her psychic crystals. Where normally she could sense the thoughts and emotions of every being in the chamber, there was a strange blank spot approaching their location. It was not the empty darkness of a dead mind, but something different. Something new. Let them dock, she said suddenly. Galactic law requires us to provide aid to ships in distress. Vex looked surprised. Princess, surely this can wait until after the ceremony. There will be no ceremony, Zara declared, her voice carrying a finality that made several delegates step backward. I will not marry someone I have never spoken to, someone whose thoughts I cannot read, someone who sees me only as a tool for political gain. If the Kron require a political hostage to secure their loyalty, perhaps they are not the allies we need. The Kron delegation erupted in mechanical clicks and electronic buzzes, their version of angry shouting. Ambassador Crone 7's optical sensors flared bright red. This insult will not be forgotten, Princess. The Kron Federation has other options for alliance. Then pursue them, Zara replied calmly. But do not expect my people to sacrifice their children for your convenience. As the various delegations began arguing among themselves, the chamber's great doors slid open. Zara turned toward the sound, expecting to see another tall, elegant alien diplomat requesting minor assistance before departing again. Instead, she saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. A human walked into the chamber, and he was completely unlike any being she had ever encountered. Where most galactic species were either tall and graceful like her own people, or mechanical and precise like the Kron, or massive and intimidating like the Hexari survivors, this human was simply ordinary. He stood at average height with brown hair and clothing that looked practical rather than ceremonial. His skin was a warm tan color that seemed to glow with an inner health that none of the artificial enhancements other species used could replicate. But what truly shocked Zara was what she felt through her psychic crystals when she looked at him: nothing. Not the emptiness of a shielded mind, not the chaos of madness, not the cold efficiency of artificial intelligence. When she reached out with her consciousness toward this human, she encountered something unprecedented. His mind was there, clearly active and intelligent, but completely natural. There were no psychic interfaces, no technological modifications, no genetic alterations to enhance mental capacity. He was exactly what nature had made him, and somehow that seemed impossibly sophisticated. The human approached the center of the chamber, seemingly unaware that he had just walked into one of the most important diplomatic gatherings in galactic history. He carried a small device that he consulted briefly before looking up at the assembled delegates. "Thank you for allowing us to dock," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that Zara had never heard in diplomatic speech. "I'm Tom Williams, representing the Earth Colonial Union. We're here to submit an application for trade status with the Galactic Council." Council leader Vex's mental touch carried amusement mixed with irritation. Through their connection, Zara felt his thoughts, of all the timing. A primitive species requesting trade rights during a royal marriage crisis. But Zara found herself studying this human with intense curiosity. There was something in his manner that defied everything she knew about galactic politics. He showed no signs of the careful submission that weaker species usually displayed before the council. Neither did he show the aggressive posturing that stronger civilizations use to demand attention. Instead, he simply stood there with quiet confidence, as if he had every right to be in this chamber of powers that could destroy his entire world without effort. "This is hardly the time for trade negotiations," Ambassador Crone 7 clicked dismissively. "Return when we have finished important business." Tom turned toward the Kron delegation, and Zara saw something remarkable happen. Instead of showing fear or anger at the dismissal, the human's face showed what she could only describe as polite interest. It was as if he was genuinely curious about the mechanical beings rather than threatened by them. "I understand you're busy," Tom said, his tone respectful but not servile. "But our ship really is damaged, and will need to stay docked until repairs are complete. Since we're here anyway, I thought it might be efficient to handle the trade application at the same time." Efficiency. He had used the Kron's own primary value as a reason for why they should listen to him, but he had done it so naturally that it seemed like simple politeness rather than calculated manipulation. Zara felt a strange sensation in her chest, something she had never experienced before. For her entire life, she had watched diplomatic exchanges that were either careful dances of deception or crude displays of power. But this human seemed to be doing something entirely different. He was simply talking to them as if they were reasonable beings who could work together to solve problems. The concept was so alien that it took her a moment to understand what she was witnessing. As the council debated whether to hear the human's request, Zara found herself hoping they would say yes. For the first time in her life, she was curious about what someone had to say, not because of their political power or military might, but because they seemed to see the world in a completely different way. She had no idea that this moment would change everything she believed about civilization, about relationships, and about what it truly meant to be alive in a galaxy full of wonders she had never imagined. Council leader Vex looked around the chamber at the arguing delegates, then back at the humans standing patiently in the center. The Kron were making angry mechanical sounds about the interrupted ceremony. The Valterian nobles were sending waves of confused thoughts through their psychic crystals. Several other species were demanding to know why a primitive world was being given attention during such an important gathering. Very well, Vex announced, his 4 arms raised for silence. The human may speak briefly while we consider the princess's decision. But make it quick, Tom Williams of Earth. Tom nodded his thanks, completely unaware that he had just been granted something most species waited decades to achieve. I appreciate your time, he said, pulling out a small device that projected images into the air above his head. Earth would like to establish trade relationships with the galactic community. We offer agricultural products, artistic works, and cultural exchange programs. Ambassador Crone, 7 made a dismissive clicking sound. Agricultural products? Our food synthesis technology eliminated farming 800 years ago. Artistic works. Art serves no logical function. Cultural exchange. What could a primitive species possibly teach advanced civilizations? Instead of becoming defensive, Tom smiled. It was such a simple expression, but Zara noticed that several delegates leaned forward slightly, as if drawn by something they had never seen before. Through her psychic crystals, she felt their confusion. Smiling as a response to criticism was completely outside their experience. That's exactly the question I hoped you would ask, Tom said, his tone remaining friendly and enthusiastic. Let me show you what makes humanity different. The projected images changed, showing scenes from Earth. Zara expected to see impressive cities or powerful weapons, the usual things species displayed to gain respect. Instead, she saw something completely unexpected. The first image showed humans sitting in a circle, making sounds with their mouths in organized patterns. This is called singing, Tom explained. Humans create patterns of sound that have no practical purpose except to express emotions and bring joy to listeners. The Kron delegation buzzed with electronic confusion. Inefficient use of vocal systems, Ambassador Crone, 7 stated. Maybe, Tom agreed cheerfully. But watch what happens when humans sing together. The image shifted to show thousands of humans in a large space, all making the same sound patterns simultaneously. Their faces showed expressions of happiness, and many had water leaking from their eyes. Zara had never seen anything like it. Through her psychic abilities, she could usually sense the emotional state of any gathering, but this was different. These humans were choosing to share emotions without any telepathic connection at all. The water from their eyes, asked Delegate Euro, a tall purple being with multiple tentacles. Are they in distress? Those are called tears, Tom said. Humans cry when they feel strong emotions, both sad and happy ones. The people in this image are crying because the music makes them feel connected to something larger than themselves. Princess Zara felt a strange sensation in her chest. Her people achieved connection through direct mental contact, sharing thoughts and feelings instantly. But these humans were creating the same result using only sound and choice. They were choosing to feel together. The images continued. Tom showed them humans creating pictures on flat surfaces, forming shapes from clay, and building structures that served no purpose except to be beautiful. He explained concepts that had no equivalent in galactic standard language: creativity for its own sake, beauty without function, love without benefit. This is inefficient, Ambassador Crone, 7 stated flatly. Resources wasted on non-productive activities. But that's just it, Tom said, his excitement growing. Humans discovered something amazing thousands of years ago. When we create things just because they bring us joy, when we help others without expecting payment, when we choose partners based on emotional connection rather than practical benefit, something incredible happens. We become more than the sum of our abilities. He gestured to another image showing humans working together to build shelters after some kind of natural disaster. When other species face crisis, they calculate the most efficient response. Humans do something different. We help everyone, even when it costs us resources. We rebuild communities even when it would be easier to relocate. We choose hope over logic. Delegate Shin, whose crystalline form reflected light in complex patterns, spoke with a voice like wind chimes. This makes no sense. Helping those who cannot help you in return is evolutionary madness. Tom turned toward the delegate, and again Zara saw that remarkable expression cross his face. Not anger or frustration, but genuine interest. You're absolutely right from a survival perspective, he said. But humans learned something that changed everything. When you help others without expecting return, when you create beauty without profit, when you choose love over advantage, you don't become weaker. You become stronger. The chamber fell silent. This was a completely alien concept to every species present. Strength came from military power, technology, psychic abilities, or political control. The idea that weakness could somehow create strength was beyond their understanding. Princess Zara found herself speaking before she realized it. How does helping others make you stronger? Tom's face lit up with that strange expression again when he looked at her. Because it creates trust, he said simply. When people know you will help them without expecting payment, they want to work with you. When they know you choose companions based on feelings rather than profit, they trust your decisions. When they see you create beautiful things just for joy, they believe you can imagine better solutions to problems. He gestured to the images above his head. Every human achievement in our history came from cooperation based on trust rather than force. We reached our moon because thousands of people worked together toward a shared dream. We ended diseases because scientists shared knowledge freely instead of keeping secrets. We survived natural disasters because strangers help strangers. Ambassador Crone, 7 processed this information with audible mechanical clicking. Impossible. Cooperation requires enforceable contracts and mutual benefit calculations. Maybe for most species, Tom agreed. But humans developed something different. We call it love. The word fell into the chamber like a stone into still water. There was no equivalent in galactic standard language. Most species had terms for attraction, partnership contracts, reproductive arrangements, and strategic alliances. But this concept Tom described seemed to encompass something beyond all of those. Love, Tom continued, is when you care about someone else's happiness more than your own advantage. It's when you choose to trust before you have proof that trust is wise. It's when you create something beautiful because you want to share joy with others. He looked around the chamber, his expression serious but still somehow warm. Every galactic civilization I've studied becomes incredibly advanced in technology and military power. But they all reach the same ceiling. They become so efficient, so logical, so focused on advantage, that they stop growing. They stop imagining new possibilities. They stop hoping for anything beyond what they can calculate. Princess Zara felt her psychic crystals resonating with something she had never experienced before. Through her mental abilities, she could sense the truth in his words, but more than that, she could sense something in Tom himself. His mind was not shielded or enhanced or modified. It was simply natural, and somehow that naturalness contained depths that all their psychic technology could not reach. Humans choose their life partners based on love, Tom said, looking directly at her. Not because it's logical or profitable, but because they want to share their joy and sorrow with someone who understands them. They create families based on care rather than genetic optimization. They build communities based on shared values rather than shared advantages. The chamber erupted into discussion as delegates tried to process this information. But Zara heard none of it. For the first time in her life, she understood what she had been fighting for when she refused the arranged marriage. She had been defending something she could not name because her language had no word for it. She had been defending the possibility of love. As the debates continued around them, Tom caught her eye and smiled again. In that simple expression, Zara saw something that made her crystals glow brighter than they ever had before. She saw recognition, understanding, and the possibility that perhaps she was not the only being in the galaxy who believed that some things were worth more than power or profit. She saw hope. The great chamber buzzed with confused energy as delegates from dozens of species tried to process what Tom had shared about human civilization. Princess Zara watched the reactions through her psychic crystals, feeling waves of disbelief, curiosity, and fear washing over the assembly. The concept of love was so foreign to their understanding that many struggled to accept it as real. Ambassador Crone, 7, stepped forward, his mechanical form clicking with agitation. "This is emotional nonsense," he declared, his optical sensors flashing red. "The Kron Federation has analyzed thousands of civilizations. Success requires logical thinking, efficient resource management, and strategic partnerships. These human concepts of art and love are primitive distractions that lead to weakness and failure." Tom remained calm, his expression still showing that strange warmth that had captivated Zara's attention. "I understand your skepticism," he said respectfully. "But consider this, how many of those thousands of civilizations you analyzed are still thriving today?" The question hit the chamber like a physical blow. Through her psychic abilities, Zara felt the uncomfortable silence that followed. The truth was evident to everyone present. Most galactic civilizations rose to great power and then collapsed within centuries. The few that survived did so by constantly absorbing or destroying others, trapped in endless cycles of expansion and conquest. Council leader Vex shifted uncomfortably, his 4 arms folding across his chest. "That is the natural order of things," he said, though his mental emanations carried doubt. "Civilizations rise and fall. Only the strongest survive. But what if there was another way?" Tom asked, his voice gaining strength. "What if civilizations could grow stronger by helping each other instead of conquering each other? What if the secret to lasting success was cooperation based on trust rather than fear?" Delegate Euro's tentacles writhed with agitation. "Impossible. Trust without guaranteed return is illogical. Cooperation without enforceable contracts leads to betrayal." Tom smiled again, and Zara noticed that even the most skeptical delegates seemed drawn to that expression. "You're right that trust involves risk," he admitted. "But humans discovered something remarkable. When you choose to trust first, when you help others without demanding payment, you don't become vulnerable. You become the kind of person others want to work with." He gestured toward the projected images still floating above his head. "Earth has hundreds of different human cultures, each with their own languages, traditions, and beliefs. For most of our history, we fought constantly over resources and territory. But when we finally learned to cooperate based on shared values instead of shared advantages, everything changed. The images shifted to show humans from different continents working together on massive projects, building structures that reached toward the stars, healing diseases that had plagued their species for millennia, creating art that combined traditions from across their world. When humans choose partners based on love instead of political gain, Tom continued, something magical happens. Those partnerships become stronger because both people are committed to each other's happiness, not just their own benefit. When they help strangers without expecting return, those strangers become friends who will help them in turn. When they create beauty for its own sake, they develop the imagination needed to solve problems that logic alone cannot handle. Princess Zara felt her crystals resonating with growing intensity. Everything Tom described matched feelings she had carried her entire life but never been able to express. She had always known that the arranged marriages of galactic politics felt wrong, but she had lacked words to explain why. Now she understood. Those marriages were based on fear and calculation, not on the deeper connection she had always hoped was possible. Suddenly, Ambassador Crone, 7 made a harsh mechanical sound. "Enough of this primitive philosophy," he declared. "The Kron Federation has better options for alliance than a species that refuses to honor agreements. We will form partnerships with civilizations that understand the value of logical cooperation. The threat was clear. If Zara continued to refuse the marriage, the Krahn would ally with someone else, possibly against the Valterian Empire. Several of her own nobles sent urgent psychic messages pressing her to reconsider. But before Zara could respond, Tom stepped forward again. "Actually," he said, his tone friendly but confident, "I think there might be a solution that works better for everyone." The entire chamber turned toward him in surprise. Here was a representative of a barely space-capable species offering to solve a crisis between galactic superpowers. "The problem," Tom continued, "is that you're all thinking about this the old way. You see only two choices: form an alliance through forced marriage or remain separate and potentially become enemies. But humans have learned there's a third option." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from multiple species. "Instead of trading children like property to maintain temporary truces, why not build relationships based on genuine understanding and mutual respect?" Delegate Shin's crystalline form chimed with skepticism. "How do you propose to build understanding between species with completely different values and communication methods?" Tom's face lit up with genuine excitement. "Cultural exchange programs," he said. "Not political hostages or strategic marriages, but voluntary programs where people from different worlds can live and work together, learning from each other's unique strengths." The idea was so simple that it was revolutionary. For centuries, galactic civilizations had maintained separation except for formal diplomatic contact and arranged political unions. The concept of voluntary cultural exchange for mutual benefit was completely outside their experience. "Think about it," Tom continued, his enthusiasm growing. "The Valterians have incredible psychic abilities that could help other species understand emotion and connection. The Krahn have technological innovations that could solve problems across the galaxy. Every civilization here has developed unique strengths that others could learn from." Princess Zara felt her heart racing as she began to understand the implications. "You're suggesting that instead of forced alliances through marriage, we could form genuine partnerships through shared learning?" "Exactly," Tom nodded, his warm smile directed toward her. "Humans learn that the strongest communities are built when people choose to work together because they respect and understand each other, not because they fear what happens if they don't." Council leader Vex leaned forward, his mental emanations carrying cautious interest. "But how would such programs be organized? Who would oversee them? How would we ensure mutual benefit without contracts and guarantees?" Tom's answer surprised everyone. "You start with volunteers. People from each world who are curious about other ways of living. You bring them together in neutral locations where they can share knowledge, art, and ideas. You let them build friendships based on genuine interest rather than political necessity." Ambassador Crone, 7 made dismissive clicking sounds, but several other delegates were nodding thoughtfully. The concept had an appeal that surprised them. "And what happens when these cultural exchanges create conflicts?" asked Delegate Euro. "When different values clash. Then you learn to find common ground," Tom replied. "Humans have dozens of different cultures on one planet, and we've learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. When you have people who think differently working together, you get solutions that none of them could have imagined alone." Princess Zara stood up slowly, feeling a sense of certainty she had never experienced before. Through her psychic crystals, she could sense the growing interest throughout the chamber. Even species that had been enemies for centuries were considering the possibilities. "I have made my decision," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. "I will not marry Ambassador Crone, 7 or anyone else as part of a political arrangement." The Krahn delegation erupted in mechanical protests, but Zara continued speaking. "Instead, I propose to become the galaxy's first ambassador for interspecies understanding. I will work with any civilization interested in building relationships based on respect and cooperation rather than fear and calculation." She looked directly at Tom, feeling her crystals glow with an intensity that surprised her. "And I request that Earth serve as an advisor in this new approach, since humans have clearly mastered something that we are only beginning to understand." The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this unprecedented proposal. Then, Slowly, approvals began coming from multiple species. The idea of cultural exchange based on voluntary participation appealed to civilizations that had grown tired of the endless cycle of political marriages and military alliances. Even some members of the Kron delegation showed interest, though Ambassador Kron, 7 remained rigid in his opposition. Tom stepped forward and offered a slight bow toward Princess Zara. Earth would be honored to participate in such a program, he said. We believe that every species has something valuable to contribute, and that learning from each other makes all of us stronger. As the council began formal discussions about implementing the new program, Zara realized that she had found something she had never expected. Not love in the romantic sense that Tom had described between human partners, but something equally powerful, the recognition of a kindred spirit who shared her belief that relationships built on understanding were stronger than those built on fear. The galaxy was about to change in ways that none of them could fully imagine. And it had all started with a simple human idea, that choosing to trust each other was not weakness, but the beginning of true strength. For the first time in her life, Princess Zara looked toward the future with genuine hope.